Hi everyone, welcome to this next session of the Jadu Academy. I've got Christine Legg from South Gippsland Shire Council with me. Morning, Christine.
Good morning, how are you doing?
Very good, thanks. Christine's Marketing and Communications Officer. And we've got, going to play you her session in just a moment. Let me just find the right button here. So if you've been at the keynote, you know the drill by now. You can join the conversation. The Jadu Twitter account is @Jadu and the hashtag is Jadu Academy. And as we mentioned earlier, there's a prize up for grabs for the best tweet. There'll be a recording of this video of the session made available afterwards, so you can watch it back or share with a colleague. You've got the ability to ask questions on that right-hand side there. There's a chat function. We'll round those up at the end of the session and have a bit of a Q&A. So feel free to ask the questions throughout. Don't hold back. We did have a question just after the keynote, and it was around, could you see it as a participant? Can we see or hear you? Don't worry, we can't. So if you've got something to ask, pop it in the chat session and we'll circle back at the end. Okay, so I've introduced Christine. What we've done is because being in Victoria, like everyone else, Christine's working from home. So we weren't quite sure about the connection, so we've pre-recorded the session, but Christine's obviously here with us now and she'll be available to answer some questions at the end. So I'm just going to push play on her presentation.
Hi,
and
thanks for joining me today. My name is Christine Legg and I work as the Marketing and Communications Officer at South Gippsland Shire Council in Victoria. My presentation today is about digitising service delivery through COVID. To start off, I'd just like to provide a bit of background about South Gippsland Shire Council. We are a geographically large shire with a small population. Well, at least in comparison to other Victorian councils, I'm guessing we're probably pretty small compared to some of the councils located in Queensland and Western Australia. We cover 3,300 square kilometres in area, and we've got a resident population of 29,780. We collect approximately 44 million in rates and have a 325 person workforce. We were also the second council in Australia to develop a website with Jadu. We were behind Wanneroo in Western Australia, and we launched our site in August 2015. To give you a little bit of an idea, if you can see this okay, in the top left-hand corner, there's a little dot there for Melbourne. And right down the bottom is Wilson's Promontory National Park. So to put it in perspective, we are the most southernmost council on the Australian mainland. So right down there at the bottom. And here's just a little slide of our website, which has served us well for 5 years now. It's yeah, we've been really happy with it. So around 2 years ago, we identified a bit of a problem. Although our site was looking great and working well, we didn't have a unified approach for customer transactions. We could get customers to the site to find information, but if they wanted to perform an action, such as to complete a form or to make a payment, then there was no consistency to how this would occur. Sometimes the customer could make a payment via ePathway, which is our customer relationship management platform. But this was only for some payments, not all. And to be honest, it could be a little bit not so user-friendly. And when it comes to forms, sometimes the customer would be directed to complete a form that was an interactive PDF. And sometimes it would be a regular PDF, or sometimes it would even be a Word doc. On many of the forms, we would actually ask them to enter their credit card details to enable payment. And here's an example of one of those forms. And this is currently still on our website, but we are hoping to get rid of this one very, very soon. Disturbingly, many customers would actually, or do actually complete this form, and then they pop it on an email and send it through to us. So this isn't ideal, it's not safe, and it's definitely not best practice. And generally what happens in this situation is very understandable. Customers, instead of completing the form online, they would telephone in and seek assistance from our customer service team. And really, we can't blame them for doing this because essentially it's easier and it's safer. We have also found that the amount of forms on our site has just kept growing and growing. We did a little bit of a form stock take at the start of the year because we thought, what are we actually dealing with? What have we got on our site? And it's a little very dodgy video of what we found. So we tried to track whether they were, what type of form it was, e-pathway, PDF, interactive, plain, online. And this is what we found. So all up, there were over 100 forms we found on our website, and many of them were barely used when we actually looked into it a little bit deeper. It was pretty clear after that that something needed to be done. We definitely needed some help. So when we realised this, we gave David a call from Jadu and we asked what might be achievable. And he came and gave us a presentation regarding Jadu XFP and its ability to streamline forms and enable customer payments. And to put it simply, we loved it. We realised that XFP would help us to make our forms and payments look more professional, and they would be far more simple from a customer perspective, which is something we're working really hard on. The ability to use logic in forms was a bit of a game changer for us. I mean, why would you make a customer read 20 questions when based on their answers, you could halve it to 10? And I guess admittedly, as the team responsible for having to create and change PDF forms all of the time, we realised it would also save us a lot of time. So I guess from our perspective, installing XFP was always going to be a win-win situation. But as often happens in local government, things don't move quickly. In this case, it was nobody's fault really. It was just a matter of needing to establish business cases, and there were other competing priorities. And I'm sure that anyone that works in the public sector can relate to this. It's just sometimes it's just how it is. But then something quite extraordinary happened. Good old COVID came along. And I think we all experienced the fear and the challenges that came with it. And I have to just note that this slide here, we had to put this on our Facebook page because we found that people were stealing the toilet paper from our public conveniences. So yeah, I'm sure we've got very similar stories that we could all discuss over a beer or two. So yes, I'm sure every council across Australia, if not the world, has had challenges due to COVID. I actually think we did rather well mobilising our workforce to being a work from home force, but one area where we really struggled was payments. We had no way to make payments for a significantly large number of our applications, as our back-end systems just weren't prepared for an extended work from home scenario. And because in Victoria we were lucky and we had double lockdown, not just one but two, the applications, they just kept coming and coming. So all up, we had between 400 and 500 applications that needed to be processed by our customer service team when they eventually returned to the office. And these weren't just little applications, like these were quite important ones. We had a huge amount of animal registrations, we had building applications, we had engineering permits. There was a huge range, and yeah, there was no end in sight. So it wasn't great, and with COVID still looming, we thought that maybe it was time to give David another call. For us, implementing XFP required a few changes to our current system. We needed to establish a UAT, a test environment, straight off the bat. Although we had managed without a UAT for a number of years, we didn't want to try and do anything regarding payments in a live setting. And to be honest, after we had the UAT in, there were other things we found, other benefits. So it's been a good installation for us. We were also running a very old, now discontinued online forms platform. So we needed to swap over existing forms to the new XFP. And Jadu were really helpful in this space, and they helped us transition the forms onto the new platform. We had some online training on the test site, and that taught us how to build the forms and outlined the extensive functionality. So that was really beneficial. We tested and reviewed the forms platform on the test site, and that was surprisingly easy. I think overall we probably made 4 styling changes, and that was it. I mean, in fact, you know, the whole implementation of XFP onto our website was surprisingly smooth. The project was completed according to the initial schedule. And yes, from a rollout perspective, it was great. But we did encounter some problems from our council end, which I thought I'd cover briefly in case anyone else is thinking of heading down an integrated form/payment path. So although the implementation of XFP went well, I think it's safe to say we underestimated how much work would be required bringing other teams along to the party. And our first hurdle was our finance team. Now, finance teams aren't known for being big partiers. And in this party analogy, the finance team were the next door neighbour who calls the cops for making too much noise. They had concerns about how payments through XFP via Secure Pay would be reconciled. To be fair, accountants are meant to be cautious, but in the end, all we really needed to do was just modify our existing practices slightly. We were already reconciling payments made in Secure Pay. We just needed to learn how to differentiate the payments and work out where they were all coming from. We also found that it was very important to do your own research. When we initially spoke to some of the teams about improving their application processes way back when, we were told we couldn't change things as this is how it had to be done. We were told this form requires signatures, for example. And in some cases, you know, this might well be the case, but we found it's worth checking it out for yourself because processes can change reasonably fast. And while a signature might have been required 8 years ago, they might not be required now. We also found that in our organisation anyway, there are certainly a different mix of partygoers. We found there are conservatives who are resistant to change. They would rather stand in the back of the room and completely avoid the spotlight. And then there are the ragers, and they're the first to tap the keg. They're so enthusiastic, but then they crash out. It's lights out at 8 o'clock. And we found that both of these groups can really have their challenges. Our advice from our experience would be to involve them and to listen to their needs, but not to lose sight of the primary objective, which for us was a clean, customer-friendly experience. We found, talking with teams, that there's a tendency for them to want to include too much information in an application form. So we'll just suggest that include only what is necessary to complete the transaction. If it's not needed, just don't ask for it. We would also suggest forming a party committee before you start. Some friends who you know will help with the setup and they'll drag people along to the dance floor when nobody's moving. You're going to want people in your corner from the start if possible. And we found it would probably be good to have some strict party rules. Maybe treat the project like an underground rave initially. We found that things were going quite well for us until word got out, and then everyone started to either want to shut down the party or they wanted in. So essentially you want to be responsible for the people you invite in. Nobody really wants wet blankets or gate crashes. And don't forget to involve customer service would be my final point on that one, because after all, they work with customers more than anyone, and they will be the go-to people to find out exactly what the customer are needing. And I don't know if anyone remembers Corey Worthington. He was famous down in Victoria for a while for hosting a party that was crashed by thousands. So yeah, don't be a Corey. So how's it going so far? Well, I guess we could say for us it's going pretty well. It's still early days, but we've rolled out a dozen new forms through the site, and the ones we've rolled out we've had great feedback for. We've been working with our finance team, and we're expecting to go live with our first forms with payment functionality before the end of the year. Fingers crossed anyway. We expect that once we do this, it'll help to engage other teams in the organisation, and they'll come along for the ride too. And pleasingly, the logic available in XFP has enabled us to reduce the length of many of our forms and make them far more customer friendly. I've just got a little bit of a case study on this. So our waste forms. Previously on our website, we had 3 forms, and these fulfilled pretty similar purposes. We had a form to report a missed bin collection, another to report a stolen or damaged bin, and a form to request a new garbage service. Now with XFP, we've reduced that to a single form that customers can use to select one or more of these actions. Just got a few slides here that sort of show the form. This is the intro form, or the instruction page. And the customer completes their details. They also have an option there to register for In the Know, which is our online newsletter. And then they can select which action they want to do, whether it is missed bin or damaged bin. And by using logic, we can branch customers to different pages and skip the pages that they're not interested in. I'm not sure if you can see the branching there, but this is how it looks from the back end. Depending on what they select is where they're moved along to. And it's an aim of ours that to streamline a lot more of our forms moving forward. We'd like to condense and just make it a lot easier for customers to submit their information to us. Now, when we started with XFP, we got a little bit of a baptism of fire through something that the state government introduced called a property preparation permit, which is a mouthful and a half to say. So property preparation permits came about following a random announcement by the Victorian Premier, Daniel Andrews, a few weeks back now. So the state government decided that they would allow people with a second home located in a regional area to visit that home to prepare it for summer or the bushfire season. And at this time, there was a ring of steel around Melbourne. It was also, as we didn't know it at the time, but it was very near the end of lockdown, and Melbourne had been cooped up for weeks at this point. So Mr. Andrews came out and he said all they would need to do to come down to regional Victoria to look at their second house was to get a permit from their local council. Thumbs up. Now, this announcement was made on a Sunday, and it came as quite a shock to many regional councils. Because, I mean, admittedly, we'd never heard of a property preparation permit, and we needed to develop one very fast. The expectation was that the permits would be emailed to customers within 48 hours of application. So we found the easiest way for us to handle this impromptu request was to use XFP to quickly generate a form that customers could use to nominate their requested dates and who would be travelling to the property. And then the idea was that this permit could then be printed out or shown on their phone to the police, and the police would allow the customer through the ring of steel roadblocks and allow them the freedom of being in regional Victoria. So I guess, yeah, there's no surprise that the permits were extremely popular. We took 600 phone inquiries on the first day after the announcement, and this was drastically reduced once we developed the permit application and made it available on our website. I mean, the fact that we could develop the form so quickly and get it up there, it just, I mean, it more than halved the calls. It was, yeah. But a lot of people wanted it. We took 689 applications in the first 48 hours via the XFP form. And ironically, just over a week later, we received an announcement that the lockdown would be ending for all of Victoria and permits would no longer be required, which I guess for us was just, it was a bit of an example of why you wouldn't want to spend a lot of money developing a form or application, because sometimes in life, in local government especially, there can be a short shelf life for a lot of applications. So I guess, oh, here we go, sorry. There's a few slides here about the property preparation permit. So the customer completed their details, their place of residence was matched with their property that they were meant to be going to. They'll outline their property location. We put some logic in the bottom question there, will you be travelling with other people to your property? If they said yes, they'd have to enter the other people they were travelling with. If they were no, they could simply go to the next question. And then they had to outline what works they were going to do when they got down to their second property. And I guess that leaves us to where to next. And for us, what's next is that we have a plan in place to tackle a streamlined overhaul of all of our existing forms. We'll be minimising and updating them team by team and in order of usage. We found the stock take we did at the start of the year was really handy in this respect, as it helps us to know which forms were the most popular and which ones were rarely used. Our aim is that all forms will be online and updated by the end of 2021, with payment capability implemented where appropriate. It's going to be a challenge, but hopefully an achievable one. We also hope to integrate our Jadu forms with Pathway, our CRM. This is also likely to be challenging, but we have a new business systems analyst on board, and she'll be helping us with this. So in summary, COVID hasn't been great. Lockdown was probably worse, but it did help us to fast track our project. So for us, there was a little light in a pretty dark year. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Christine. If you want to flick your camera back on, we've got a couple of questions. I have to apologise for the resolution on that video. It was saved in crisp 1080p and uploaded to the platform that we're using for today, and it's somewhere along the line it's obviously got a little bit mangled. So apologies. We'll see if we can fix that for when we release the save version of today. We've got some good questions, Christine. The first one I'm going to fire your way. The first one up was from Glenn, which was, how has the council website changed over the last 5 years since launch, and what aspirations for the site next year?
Yeah, it's a good question. Structurally, it probably hasn't changed a huge amount. We've really tried to keep to how it was set up originally. When we develop new home pages, we're trying to sort of really instill in everyone that this is how it needs to look. But probably the biggest change is just the amount of content that has grown in that 5 years. It's different sort of teams, everyone sort of wants to add more to it, and yeah, that's probably the biggest change we've had, is just we've gone from a sort of a small site that was pretty tight and clean, and it's just sort of grown. So our next aspiration is to actually get it back down. We're really aiming to just reduce it back to what it was initially, and to make sure that there's no content on the site that's junk, really. We just want stuff that customers are interested in. So yeah, I guess that's probably about it. Yeah.
Right. Well, the next question was from Kylie, and she asks, you mentioned form logic. Does XFP have the ability to present a question depending on an answer?
Yes, the form logic is, yeah, that really has been the game changer for us. We have some forms, which I think I mentioned, that are e-pathway forms, and there was a big push for us to keep going down that path because, oh yeah, it's easy to integrate it in our back systems, but there's no logic in those, and it just means for a customer it's a really unwieldy, they've just got to complete so many questions to get to where they want. By putting in the logic, we can just make it so much more simple, and yeah, depending on what they answer, you just flick through to the next bit. For things like animal registration, we're sort of still playing around with that at the moment, but I would say it would change the form entirely. It'll go from being a really clunky, drawn out process to being something that people can answer and put together quite quickly. So yeah, the logic is amazing.
Yeah, and just to add to that, in response to Kylie's question, the means by which you can branch or you can conditionally display questions within a form are fairly wide and varied. So you can do it either on a basis to, if someone answered A or B, you can present an option based on that. But you can also do it based on a calculation, on a logic, on there's a whole raft of things, what time of day it is, etc. So yeah, happy to follow up with that with you, Kylie, if you want more info on that. The next question was from David, and he asks, how are you managing getting the forms data into your CMS, or have you made the decision not to? And I guess, Christine, this sort of, from an integration standpoint, you've really been looking more at sort of the pathway side of things, haven't you?
Yeah, and that's probably one of our challenges, is we do want to make the connection between the Jadu form, which is easy for the customer to use, but we do want it to be able to pull the information, whether it's through an API or whatever, into Pathway, which is our CRM, because that'll make life easier from a back-end perspective. Yeah, so we are working on that. We probably don't know exactly how that's going to work out yet, but that's going to be a priority for 2021. And we're going to really look into that and see what we can work out. Not doing it at the moment, something we really want to do.
Great. The next question is from Selchuk. Does customer service still use hard copy forms, or do they jump online and fill out the form for customers online?
At the moment, they're still using the hard copy forms, but they have expressed an interest in being able to do it all online. It would make it easier for them, provided we can make it easy for them to do. Obviously, if it's going to be more onerous on an online one, they'll stick to the hard copy. But yeah, they've got an interest there, and I think eventually we'll be trying to transition across to that.
Excellent. Okay. And then David sort of had a follow-up question for me. Are there RPA or robotic process automation options for moving forms data into other systems? There are options. Whether we've done that using RPA, I'm not 100% sure. So I'll probably take that one away, David, and come back to you if that's okay. And yeah, Kylie, I think, yeah, absolutely happy to follow up with you on a couple of those questions that you've made, that you've raised. So I think any other questions from anyone? I think that's all of them. Got a couple of minutes left, Sarah. What do you want to do? Should we finish it there? I think we've probably covered most of what we needed to cover.
Hey, yeah, that's perfect. So yeah, we'll end the session there. Thank you everyone again for attending. And we've got another session. Next session is with the LGAQ. So that's Brett Johnson and Tracy. They'll be covering all things LGAQ and what the plans are there. So we've got that session in about 17 minutes. So I hope you see some of you there. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Christine.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.